Okay, that's on, Leader.
Okay, we were ready to go. All right. May I remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live via the internet. Do I have any apologies?
I've not received any apologies, Leader, but at the moment, Councillor Meeson hasn't joined the meeting. He's the only person missing.
Okay, I was talking to him a minute or two ago, so I'm sure he will.
Okay.
Any declarations of interest, Bob?
Thank you, Leader. I do need to declare against item 2 and item 5 on the agenda today. Non-pecuniary interest in my role as Chair of the West Midlands Combined Authority Investment Fund and a UGC Director. Whilst these roles could give rise to a conflict of interest, I'm satisfied that no such conflict occurs in relation to item 5. Thank you, Leader.
Any others? I think I can see everybody on the screen and I don't see any hands, so I'm going to move on. Any questions and deputations?
None received, Leader.
Okay, so that takes us to the minutes of the meeting held on 18th of June on page 5. It's everybody happy with those? Okay, all right, so the first substantive item then is on page 13, which is the Urban Growth Company business plan for 2020 and working capital requirements. Can I ask who is going to lead that? Mary, you've got the responsibility.
I have. Thank you very much, Chair. So there are two elements to this report. Firstly, to seek Cabinet approval of the Urban Growth Company's business plan for 2020-2021. And secondly, to provide an update on the cash flow requirements for the UGC and to request an additional cash advance of £4.2 million in order that it can meet its short-term expenditure commitments. If I can please take members to paragraph 3.2 of the report. So this presents the UGC business plan for 2020-2021, and that's our Appendix 1. The business plan highlights some of the achievements of the UGC since its formation and sets the priorities over the coming year as it continues to deliver on its overall objectives. Cabinet is recommended to approve the business plan this evening, therefore providing the UGC with the confidence that its priorities and approach are supported by the Council as sole shareholder. Under paragraph 3.4, the Council's ambitions to maximise the economic impact of HS2 and the UKC hub will be unlocked by the delivery of 7 key priority work packages, which are detailed in the business plan on page 3. In summary, these 7 projects are Birmingham International Station, an automated people mover, a new roundabout over the HS2 track, appropriate car parking provision, the M42 public transport and pedestrian bridge, various transport pinch point improvements, and finally, an electricity network. In addition, in paragraph 3.6, the business plan outlines some of the UGC's plans for ensuring hub development helps deliver a low carbon economy. And finally, in paragraph 3.7, the work of the UGC is aligned with the Council's own approach to social value and benefits realisation. And I'm pleased to say this evening we're joined by the Managing Director of the UGC, Jonathan Bretherton, who can, if the Chair would like, take members through the business plan in a bit more detail or take any questions either now or later, because the second element of the report from paragraph 3.9 around cash flow requirements will be led by the Director of Finance and Deputy Chief Executive. Thank you, Chair. Mute, Chair.
Welcome, Jonathan. I can now see you on the screen. Do you wish to add anything to what Mary has said? This is a big item of business, so make sure it's all covered. You are mute now.
Sorry,
Thank you, Leader, and Mary, thank you for introducing this. I'm very proud and privileged to be your Managing Director for the Urban Growth Company. I'm very pleased to present this business plan. I'm also pleased to say that we're ahead of programme in terms of where we expected to be at this stage, as well as the priorities that are identified in the business plan. Given that notice to proceed was confirmed by government 13 weeks ago, we've been making huge progress on a number of fronts, notably at Arden Cross and the proposed car parking solution, which is one of the 7 priorities. The funding waterfall group, chaired by Steve Hollis on behalf of the Mayor, has made substantial progress, and the political support that we've had has been first class as always, as is the officer support. So very happy to take any questions if there are any, Leader.
Okay, I'm looking for anyone with their hand up at the moment. I see no one wanting to ask questions. Yes, Councillor Adeyemo.
Thank you, Leader. Just a couple of questions, really, about if we go to page 16. Sorry, the bottom of page 15, 3.13. Just trying to find out. It's probably a layman's question, but what's the payment mechanism for the council with some of these things? Because we say that we've got approved funding, but then we're having to, approve that the council temporarily funds projects. Why don't we just get the money? Probably is a layman's question.
Paul Johnson.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, thanks for the question. So in respect to these 7 work packages at 3.4 and over onto page 15, how it works is that the Urban Growth Company submits business cases for funding approval to the Combined Authority, to the West Midlands Combined Authority. Combined Authority approves that funding, but then that has to be claimed, and it's claimed in arrears. So the Urban Growth Company has to spend the money before we can claim it, and they need the funding to be able to spend the money. So we have to advance in the cash flow. They spend it on the work packages. We then claim it back from the Combined Authority, and that closes the loop in terms of getting the money back.
Okay. Okay,
Yes.
Addy.
Thank you. I do have one more question. In 6.5.1, the risk registers. Just wanting to know whether the risk registers, especially in the current climate, does it actually cover councils' cash flow issues? Because if councils are in arrears at the moment, they're probably going to be more reluctant to be funding projects such as this, because they're having to find, millions of pounds for their normal budgets. So does the UGC's risk register actually cover these cash flow issues?
Is that another one for you, Paul, or do you want Jonathan? I suppose it was a question of UGC, so that's for you, Jonathan.
So UGC doesn't identify this as a risk because it's a cash flow item. Essentially, we are wholly owned by the council, so we're not a third-party entity. Therefore, for these purposes, we consider ourselves to be very much a part of the council processes. So I think probably better fielded by Paul on this one.
Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Because it's just cash flow. I mean, it's not a payment. It's just cash flow which we'll get back. That doesn't cause us a problem. We've currently got £70 million of investments as a council. Clearly, there were challenges through COVID, but that's not going to eradicate that amount of investment. So, because it's just the cash flow, that's fine. If it was a payment, we might be having a different discussion, but it's just the cash advance.
Okay. Any more questions, Councillor Hawkins?
Yeah, just a quick one. Thank you, Leader. You say the report's quite specific. The delivery and safeguarding of some 70,000 jobs and the economic uplift this will bring to the region as a whole. It's so welcomed, especially at this time. I fully support the recommendations.
Okay. I mean, it's economic uplift, but it's also best use of land and place to put homes. I mean, that's a very key consideration for us all. I can't see any other hands up. So in which case, I'm going to go to the decisions on page 13 to approve the Urban Growth Company Business Plan 2020 and approve the additional cash advance of 4.2 million on project costs detailed in para 3.9 to 3.14. Is everybody happy with those recommendations?
Agreed.
All right. Yeah. I think that was unanimous. Now we move to page 43, which is the update on applications to funding bodies that support the council's priorities. Who is taking this? Perry?
Yeah, yes, Leader. Thank you. Cabinet members, Leader, this is one of a series of reports on external funding that you'll be aware comes to Cabinet periodically. The aim is to provide an update on the external funding applications that the Council submits, to support the submission of applications and to accept the funding where those applications are successful. You'll see from the report that 5 projects are included within this particular report, with a total ask for external funding of around £12.5 million. The 5 projects are set out in Appendix 1. Very briefly, Project A is the Berkswell project. With the details you can see there around improvements to the character of the village of Berkswell at a value of £250,000. DFT funding from classified roads of £1.75 million roughly, and that we've had further confirmation that those funds are now believed to be secure. A large application for a total value of £11.3 million from the ERDF SUD priority, which is Sustainable Urban Development priority. That's at the expression of interest stage at this case, in the context of this project. What that means is that we've made a submission subject to that expression of interest being accepted. That would then lead to a full application having to be made. If that was, it'd be at that point that we'd need to confirm all the match funding, and the match funding requirements are set out in the table in Appendix 2. The match funding at the moment includes anticipated funds from other external funders, some existing council budgets and staff time. There's no additional ask at this moment in time on that one. Project D is the Blythe Valley Park cycle route. As you can see, funding is secured. That's a Section 106 agreement, and we're seeking approval this evening so that that project can progress with the use of those funds. And lastly, Project E is for Longley Bridge. I think Cabinet considered that project last time when we looked at this round of this type of report. And the good news is that application has been successful, and those funds have been attributed to the council. So they're the 5 projects. I can answer any questions, Leader. Recommendation 2.8 effectively asks for you to approve that should those be successful, any of those 5, and some have already, then we could enter into, with the director and in consultation with the relevant cabinet member, to enter into contracts and to secure that funding. Thank you.
Okay, have we got any questions on this report? It's largely self-explanatory. Yeah, Addy.
Yes, okay, I was trying to find it. Thank you, Chair. Just on page 45, 3.15, with regard to Project D, the Blythe Valley cycle route. I would like to know what's the issue here. You know, sort of why the rush? Why can't this wait until September, when we will have the opportunity to actually discuss this properly? It seems to me that once a decision is made here now, then going to the cabinet portfolio holders decision session seems pointless, because a decision will have been made. So, and we're not going to get a chance to look at it properly. I'm just wondering why it has to be done now.
Perry?
It would normally be done earlier in the year. I think that's the point. And because it wasn't, the funds weren't available at that moment in time, it wasn't included in that initial report. I think it's just to make sure that there isn't any delay in terms of the delivery of the scheme and that it can move ahead. Because it's Section 106 monies, it's obviously specified for a very particular purpose, and therefore it couldn't be used for anything else anyway, is my understanding.
All right. Ken Meeson?
Yes, thank you, Leader. This is just about accepting the funding. It's not about the details of the route. Those have still got to be worked out. There's still got to be consultation around those. So this is just making sure that the funding is available for when we actually get down to planning the route and getting into the detail.
Okay, all right, Andy? Yep. Okay, any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any, so we'll go back to page 43, and there are various recommendations there in 2.2, 2.3, 2.4. I mean, we have discussed them. I don't propose to go through those individually. In fact, we go on to 2.9. So the whole series of recommendations there, which are before you and presumably you've read, is everybody happy to approve those?
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, thumbs up from everyone. So we will move on, therefore, to page 55, which is the annual risk management report. And I thought I saw Oliver somewhere on the screen. Paul.
Thanks, Leader. I'll introduce this report, and then if we get into detail, Oliver will help. So the Council's risk management process is based on a system of escalation, and the most significant risks get escalated all the way up the hierarchy to the strategic risk register. So this is the strategic risks that currently appear on the register, which was last reviewed by the corporate leadership team on 9th of June. A summary of the risks is set out on page 56. There are 15 risks in the strategic risk register, which is the same as last year's register that was presented to Cabinet this time last year. So the number of risks hasn't changed. The severity of risks hasn't really changed. We still have 2 net red risks, and they are because of financial reasons. One is the MTFS delivery because of the COVID deficit, and one is the combined authority risk because UK Central isn't fully funded. So that's why those 2 are red. We've got a couple of risks out of the 15 in the private part of the agenda because they are confidential. The register is attached to the report, quite some detail showing the actions that are being taken to try and mitigate the risks, and each strategic risk is owned by a member of the corporate leadership team. So the purpose of presenting the report to Cabinet is because 2 reasons. Firstly, because it's an annual report, and secondly, to make sure Cabinet are comfortable that this strategic risk register covers all the significant risks that the Council is currently facing. Thank you.
Okay, any questions on the risk management report? I hope you've all read it. Okay, so the recommendation on page 55 is specified asked to consider the information produced, and if felt appropriate, comment on any additional risk or mitigating factors that should be reflected. And no one said they wish to refer any, so I'm assuming that.
Leader, Councillor Caldwell wishes to speak.
Yes, sorry, Steve, I missed you.
No worries. Yeah, I did have a couple of questions on some of the risks. Well, one of them has already been addressed by Paul. On page 60, the Brexit implications. What happened between April and January to de-escalate that risk so significantly? Because it's gone from a red 9 to an amber 5. I just wanted to understand what the information was that led the CLT to take it down that significantly.
Okay, who's going to respond to that?
Nick's waving his hand.
Nick.
I'll try and respond. Thanks for that, Councillor Caldwell. So in terms of why we've reduced the risk, we've done a detailed analysis with the combined authority with our LEP and also with civil servants around the mitigations in terms of the actual practicalities of adopting the 3 levels of Brexit. So if you remember, on the 1st of January, I think it's the 1st of July, and I think it's the 1st of November, there are 3 stages in terms of the transition phases. So this is a very technical piece around ensuring that our supplies as a council, our support for the borough, our additional environmental health requirements in and around the airport are all covered off. So it's obviously, as you identified, still a risk, but this is based on our statutory duties and our mitigations for that. Obviously, there are wider economic risks around the Brexit piece, which will play in through the wider risks that we've got for the combined authority. So this is very much a practical response to the risks that we face as your council officers. Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, Steve.
One more if I may, please. The other one is on page 62 around the adult social care pressures. That scored today the same as it was in February. So I just wanted to be clear that we're saying there's no additional risks in that space despite what we've been with COVID-19.
Okay, who's picking that up? Ken Mason.
Thanks. I have a question about this. Is an annual update. Given the uncertainties at the moment, whether it's around COVID or government plans, will we have the opportunity to look at an update later in the year to see if anything has changed, rather than wait for 12 months before we look at another update?
Okay, that's two questions. Steve's question hasn't been answered, so I'm looking for who's going to take.
It's Jenny. I'm waving.
Jenny,
I don't know if you
we
can
got
see
you.
me.
Yeah, I'm doing my best.
Okay.
But yeah.
No, that's fine. Sorry. So in terms of the risk, it's as it is, and it hasn't changed because we've had the additional financial support from the government, and that includes, in terms of providers, the Infection Control Fund, and you'll also know that we have some reserves for adult social care as well. So this risk, and you'll see in the title, is for 2021. So on balance, although there is still a risk, we think it's fairly reasonable for it to be at 7 at the moment for this financial year. Thank you.
Okay, all right, that's that question, I hope, answered. Yes. And now updating of the risk register. Nick's going to pick it up.
Yes, thanks, Leader. Thanks, Councillor Meeson, for your question there. So obviously through Ollie and through Paul, this comes through to Cabinet, to CLT on a monthly basis, where we analyse each of these levels and we amend them. So we have a built-in process. My expectation is that for you as our Cabinet members, you will have these regularly reported in your updates with your directors, but also these will come through to scrutiny and also to the subcommittee for audit as well. So we've got all those checks and balance, and that'll be in Councillor Wild's agenda as well, in terms of our risk against our performance. So those are regularly, there's a battle rhythm for that, and through the minutes of this meeting we can share that so that members are all clear on our expectations of ourselves and how we report into you as our Cabinet. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions that I've missed, or questioners that I've missed rather than questions? All right, I'm seeing none, so I'm going to try again with a recommendation on page 55. Is everybody happy for that recommendation? Everybody approves that? Okay, I see thumbs up from everybody. So that takes us to the end of the public agenda. And now I think I haven't got any other words, but if I can remember what they are, I beg to move that the press and public be removed from the meeting on the basis that the reports contain exempt information as defined in Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. Have I got those words right? Anyway, are we all in agreement to go into private? Yeah, okay. Switch off the video cams.